and discuss the importance of visual arts in telling diverse and meaningful stories. Please join me in welcoming Simon Federick and Justin Porter. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining me in the hot seat here today. I am your host, the ever-inquisitive Dion Batiste-Clark. Could you guys start by telling me a little bit about your respective intros into your chosen fields? Justin, you want to start?
Yeah. So I got into it, making Vine videos and just kind of social media content 8 years ago. And I love the intro that you said. What we started molding and bringing into the wedding industry was a reality TV approach. So instead of just filming, traditional B-roll of people getting dressed and, the bride and her family, we mic up half the wedding party and we conduct interviews the entire day, and we really produce it like it's an episode of like Keeping Up with the Kardashians. But it's real. There's no fake drama, there's no fake emotions. Like, we're filming families as authentic as it can be with dialogue to create these stories.
Thank you. What about you?
Oh, it is on, right. We have to check.
It's nervous at first.
I know. Good morning. So my entrance into the field was by accident, really. I never started out wanting to be a photographer. In fact, I went to college to become a graphic designer. So photography became an accidental path, which was basically some friends of mine were doing a concert at the Jazz Cafe in London. I took some pictures. Their management called me the next day to say that the independent newspaper needed some pictures. They didn't have a photographer. Could they use some of my pictures? I sent them the pictures. They published the pictures. And about 2 months later, the picture editor from The Independent called me up and said they wanted me to go and photograph Erykah Badu at the Brixton Academy. I said no. This conversation lasted about 45 minutes, and 45 minutes later, in the offer of £1,000, I said yes, and I went. I stood in the pit area, which is usually just the area for photographers. I had a pass that said photographer, which was bigger than my camera, and nervousness and fear meant that every shot was a gem, and I caught the bug from there.
Nice.
That's amazing.
It is. I can't believe you said no at first, though.
I said no because I wasn't a photographer.
Well, they saw something. I'm glad you eventually said yes. Could both of you give me a little bit, share your thoughts a bit on what you think are some of the most important elements in visual storytelling?
Ooh, for me, it's an easy one. I always say this, but passion. Like, I love what he said. He went to school for graphic design, didn't even know that this itch for photography was there, did it on a whim, and then boom, like the passion took over. And for me, like, visual storytelling, I don't see that as a job for anybody that's in the industry. Like, it is something that brews and grows within you. And as a result, when you have the camera in your hands, you get to tell these stories. You get to paint the picture of what you want your audience to see. And so for me, like, I think that is the core fundamental of visual storytelling, is passion. Like, where that love and desire to show emotion, whether it's photo or video, when you love it, like, no matter what you put on that screen or what you deliver for prints, it's always going to represent what your vision, what your creative mind wanted to put out. So, passion.
No, I totally agree. Because that passion translates into it's a feeling, and when you transmit that feeling to the people that you are, whether you're photographing them or you're going to be interviewing them in a video or whatever it is, it's like they want to be relaxed with you. They want to know that you're cool, that you know what you're doing, yeah? Because most people don't like a camera stuck in their faces. They if you stuck a camera in my face now, it's like unless you know what you're doing, I'm going to freeze up too. Yeah. So, I think that the skill behind it, in terms of visual storytelling, is really about that passion. It's really about, I can't put it any better. I think Justin summed it up perfectly. Yeah.
I love it because I think that's literally when you were saying that, I was like, oh, he didn't even know. And same kind of similar story. Like I was doing music. That was like, I loved it. I played all the instruments, played the piano, and I was going down that path. And then one day I got, oh, hey, would you shoot my best friend's elopement? My wife asked me, and I was like, yeah, sure. And next thing you know, it's like, wait a minute, this is kind of dope. Like I kind of like this, And then the passion and joy, everything else just kind of took off from there.
I just want to add, hello? All right. There's something about, there was something about photographers, because I used to work at Elle magazine years ago, and I used to spend a lot of time not in my own department, but I spent a lot of time in the picture editor's department, just looking at pictures that had been shot. So I had some kind of vicarious love of photography, and I admired photographers. Yeah, I believed that they had a way of seeing the world that was so unique, that it put them on another level, right? But I never believed that I was one of them. So I admired them from afar, and I'd hired lots of photographers. I knew the type of photography that I liked. I knew the type of photographers that I liked to work with, And those were, because, can I swear? A little bit? All right, a little bit. There are a lot of arseholes in the industry, And,
that's a good word.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people who, they're not interested in the person or the people in front of them. All they're interested in is using them as objects and capturing the objects, but not capturing the essence and the soul and the emotions and the personalities of those people, And I always gravitated to the people that were interested in people and not the people that were just interested in, that's why we were talking.
The shot.
Yeah, getting the shot, yeah.
Okay, that brings me to my next question. I'm always very curious about what is going through your minds when you're behind the lens, because we see the finished product. We see what you see in your head. But what are you thinking, whether it's wedding photography or videography, whether it's a cultural exhibition that you're working on? I'm always enamored and always trying to figure out, what is it that you guys see when you're about to click to get it shot?
For me, I would say, it's so fun. I think it's like, the way I would describe it is like it's a rabbit race. Like, if you throw 50 rabbits in the field, and as the director, your job is to go catch each one of them. That's how I feel like I'm running around at weddings. I'm chasing this story, which is the rabbits, right? They're going all over the place, and you got a convo over here, you've got dialogue over here, you find out that this part happened in the relationship. And so for me, when I'm behind the camera, and I got someone that's on my team that's here, but like he could even attest, I am constantly adding to the story. So I'll find out a little piece, like I could find out that your dad did this for you when you were 14, and that's the reason why, something happened in your life. Now, I'm gonna try to connect that. I'm gonna go find dad, I'm gonna get his interview, and then I'll take that interview and go back to the daughter and be like, hey, your dad just told me this, like, how's that make you feel? And so for me, it's just like, I think that's why I love it so much. It's the thrill of chasing the narrative. Like, I could know everything about you, but my job is to now get you to tell me on camera in a creative way that doesn't feel forced, doesn't feel staged, feels very authentic. And then at the same time, how can I use that to my advantage to get someone else to give me their perspective of the story? So for me, it's just like that thrill of just, I'm just constantly thinking like, where's the next gem? Where's the next piece of the story? Where's the next puzzle piece?
It's interesting listening to Justin speak, because basically it's like there is a difference between videography and film directing, and that is the number of people on set. Now, first time I directed my first film, I walked on set and I couldn't believe how many people there were there. And I remember walking off set, going back and going through my paperwork and looking at all of these people and seeing what they all did and thinking, right, okay. Because it can be overwhelming, but everyone's there to do a specific job, to make your life easier, But what I love about directing, what I love about being on set, being off set, pre-production, production, post-production, is coming up with an idea, right? Seeing that idea come to life, seeing all of the different departments come together, right, to bring that idea together, right? And what I love about directing is like you're a conductor in an orchestra, okay? There's all the different departments of the orchestra, and you're there keeping time with all of them. But what I love about directing as well is hiring great people who are incredible at their jobs, composing music, doing costumes, all of the different elements, makeup artists, cinematographers, all of these people, and seeing them bring their A games to raise the bar and the level of what you have done. Seeing an actor, you've been working on that script for years, and then you sit down for the first time and hear them not read those lines, but become the people in those characters. It's like the goose pimples come up. So that's what I love about this craft is really allowing other people to seeing other people shine. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people really understand the size or I don't even know if there's a word to describe it, but like how you can have an idea. And it's so weird because I feel like as a director, like you can see the story. You already saw the movie, but now you got to get like the crew and all the people that's helping you to help actually turn it into something that we can watch over and over, where it's not just this like, when they say like, oh, use your imagination as a kid, like that's what we're doing now as adults. We're literally using our imagination, and we're like, this is the story. This is what I wanted to do. Oh, we need that shot. We need this shot. We want it to look like this. And then, like you said, you got the whole crew that comes together at the end of the day, and then you hit play on the screen, and it's like, oh.
No, but children, you always tell children that keep playing, play for as long as possible, right? As directors, as creatives, we get to keep playing. Yeah, that's the thing. If there are a lot of adults that you meet, it's like I'm in my 50s now, and I say to people, it's like, guys, it's like you're not dead yet. You have to keep, the thing about remaining young, you have to remain young in your mind. You have to never stop playing. You never stop seeking the play in your life.
How do you balance artistic expression with the commercial realities of the industry?
That's a good one. I think with us, like it's a little different since my end goal would be to obviously do a bigger production. But yeah, there's still like a lot that I want to do within the wedding industry that I'm restricted to. I call it handcuffs. Like I'm handcuffed to certain requirements or certain things like are just out of my control. And so that does affect creativity. You know what I mean? I feel like creativity is always supposed to be unboxed. Like I can't say like, oh, hey, show up and just give me 20% of your directing abilities. Just 20. Throw the other 80% in this box and don't touch it. It's extremely difficult because you want to like just express yourself. You want to keep going, and that creativity sometimes has to get suppressed. And so for us, what we learn to do is, I think this just really helps in our field more than anything, is just being overly communicative with the other people that are helping you that day. Whether it's, different photographers or different filmmakers that are there, or, the coordinators or DJs, like anyone that's there to help facilitate the day. What helps us be able to really express our creativity and get the things that we need is just communicating this process, maybe the things we would like to do. How can I do this to help you in your job, you know? And can we work together? Can I mic up the DJ for you instead of you doing it, you know? And so we just come up with ways to like collaborate where it's not like one person's in charge, like, oh, the film team's in charge, or coordinators in charge, or planners in charge. It's all of us.
We're made slightly different because I'm dealing with networks and broadcasters, yeah, and I tell black stories. Okay, so I'm always pushing a very heavy boulder up a very steep hill, yeah. And what I mean by that is that someone like me, someone who looks like me, unless you're Tyler Perry, and this is, I mean, I've sat down with a lot of the top black producers in Hollywood, and the kind of consensus is that the only person who doesn't have to ask for permission in terms of what they want to make, the ideas that they'd like to put into the world, is Tyler Perry. Everyone else has to go and ask the man for permission, yeah? And that's very difficult in terms of coming up with an idea that you know is a great idea, okay, but having to unravel someone else's filter for their commercial perspectives and whatever, and also their cultural biases that you have to sit in that room and work out in the moment whether they have a cultural bias or not, and then unravel that to get to the point that you're trying to make, to sell your idea. So from a commercial point of view, that's always the implication in the industry. From a creative point of view, once you've got past that hurdle, there is the creative point of view of you always fighting for the creative elements that you want to put in the film. You know, there's always someone who says, well, I don't get that. Why would you want to do that? You know, and you having to always justify every creative decision that you make. In one of my films that I made for the BBC, and I was saying this in the masterclass, when you do work for the BBC, you always have to have an exec producer that is appointed by the BBC that basically reports to the BBC and then reports to you. So I call them the overseers. Yeah. So we had this one guy on one of my biggest shows, and when we first started working, he said to me, and he was quite, you know, balanced with this, very excited about it. He came to me and he said, I'm an expert in black and white civil rights archive, and I'm going to be really happy to work with you on this, to put this in your film. And I was like, we're not having that kind of shit in my film. And he was like, what? So he went back to the BBC and said that everything that we wanted to do, to go back, he said to me, what are you going to do instead? And I said, well, I'm thinking about doing animation. So basically, instead of having those elements which are jarring and triggering to us as black people, right, to do it in another way, to do that with animation, yeah. And so, for example, there was a scene with Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte talking about the pact that they had to do things differently, to not continue the habits that had come previously in terms of black people's portrayal in film. And what we did was we showed them walking down the street, Sidney in front, you know, walking along, holding his Oscar, and then basically them morphing into these kind of like monkey figures, whatever, which had been the depiction, and then morphing back into themselves. And I remember when we premiered the film in the cinema that we premiered, people gasping at that point. And at that point, we knew that what we had done was correct in terms of the approach that we took. But the overseer had gone back and said that we were naive with what we wanted to do. And it took months of negotiation with the BBC, and when they finally came and saw what we did, they actually ordered more animation in the film.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry for the long story.
No, that's no problem at all. Interesting
Can I
stuff.
ask just a quick question? I'm curious if that ever comes back, and 'cause something you said was like the constant kind of battle of explaining the creative vision, like over and over and over and over, and you just keep going up, got to go over the pitch. When you find yourself in those situations, does that ever hinder your creative expression? Like, do you ever get to a point where you're like, you know what, forget it, or how do you handle that?
That's a really good question, because basically how I've handled it is that I now predominantly only pitch in the United States, yeah, because basically I think in the States, as we all know, there is a history of racism within America, but America loves capitalism. Yeah, if it looks like it's going to make money, yeah, if it sounds like it's going to make money, we don't care what color it is, as long as it's going to make green. Yeah, so it's easier to take an idea and to explain it, to pitch it. In America, where people are looking at it from a commercial, is there an audience for this? Whereas in England, there is, who's this going to offend? Yeah, so that's always you're always going through. In England, there's always a very, very small lens, and it's not, out of 100% of commissioners in the United Kingdom, probably there are 4 or 5 brave hearts who will go, yeah, let's do this. Yeah, everyone else wants to. Everyone says that they're looking for something that will win an award or get them their promotion. Yeah, but they're afraid to take the risk. Yeah.
It's crazy. Justin, shifting gears just a little bit. What would you say has been some of the biggest challenges that you would have encountered in your journey to get to where you are now?
I was actually getting ready to post this on Threads yesterday. I took a photo with the group that was in our one of our workshops yesterday, and so I got ready to post it because I presented multiple times, but there was just something super fulfilling about being here and speaking to people that looked like me, right? And I said, in the post, I was like, yeah, I'm not one of those people who speak on politics and stuff like I usually I stay quiet, right? I know what the world is like. I know the cards that I'm dealt, but it's like I'm just gonna do my thing. And so I was posting and I was saying, how in a world that, speaking in America, right? Because I've never really worked anywhere other than the U.S. But yeah, in a country that typically suppresses Black people, I think it hasn't always been easy, and that's what I was saying in this post. It hasn't been just this success story, right? Like I've had so many, dark times and hard times, and often I would say the biggest challenges for me was feeling, which they wouldn't explicitly say it, but I had to work harder just to prove that I was as talented as another person, right? And so for me, that's always been, like the things that other people could get away with and could, maybe not do, I had to continue to push and kind of scream
you mean white
this
people?
Idea. Yeah, but I don't like making it black and white. But
yeah, but it's, you see, this is the thing. And sorry to cut you, Justin, but it's like what I found in my career is that I tell Black stories not because I'm I want to be right on or anything like that. I'm a Black man, so that's the way I see the world. Yeah, and we are constantly given white stories. Yeah, and it's like I heard an old Kenyan man once say that this world is too complex to be driven or guided by the stories of just one culture. Yeah, and that really stuck with me because basically it is easier for white creatives. Yeah, white art is seen as being universal for everyone, and Black art is seen as being inferior to that, and that isn't the case. Tell that to Nike.
I feel like that makes it that makes the point too, because You know, like for example, you saying you tell black stories is something that is to another black person may not want to because they know that that path is for the Tyler Perrys, right? Like you're Tyler Perry or you're gonna tell the story they tell you to tell, which may not sit right morally, you know what I mean? And so you find yourself in this area where it's like, you know, do I want to be artistic and successful or do I just want to chase my passion and do it my way? You know, maybe it's not as lucrative, but I'm happy, my morals are intact. And I think the battle for me has always been being able to do what I do in a predominantly white industry, but also not have to feel like I'm changing and not have to feel like I've become this different person to be where I'm at.
Yeah, and to answer that, you know, Tyler Perry, what Tyler Perry does is very specific to Tyler, yeah? But for example, if I was to come and, if I was doing a documentary on creatives and I did a documentary on you, yeah, it would be on you. The audience would actually see you, feel you, and understand everything that you're about as a human being that happens to be black. And that's predominantly what I do with my shows. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Simon, your documentary drawing reference to Black is the New Black. It has been praised for its cultural impact. Can you share a little bit more about what drives you to pursue narratives like that and what has been the most surprising response to your work along those lines?
So basically, I decided to make, I think I came up with the idea of Black is New Black in 2013. And it was predominantly driven from the fact that growing up in London in the 1970s, yes, I'm that old, my mum would take me and my brothers to the West End of London. And we grew up in West London, which was an area called Shepherd's Bush. And the other black people in that area, it's predominantly a Grenadian area. People would say, Joan, don't take the boys up west. You know they don't like us up there. And my mum would say, no, I'm getting on the bus, we're going, and I want my boys to have an open mind about the world. Yeah. And I remember her taking us to the National Portrait Gallery. And I knew nothing about portraiture at the time. And I remember walking around this gallery and seeing all of these portraits from hundreds of years back, yeah, and really being fascinated by them. And I remember I had points in my life where, you know, something didn't go right at school, and I would just find myself sat in the National Portrait Gallery. Yeah. And then years later, I spent 16 years working in Portugal because I started out as a music photographer. I would go around and basically shoot live bands, and I became very good at it and worked with a lot of, I mean, literally everyone you can think of I had worked with. But I was never home, so I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I'd worked in advertising, I wanted to shoot advertising, but to be an advertising photographer, you needed to have an agent. And there was only one agent one photographer in London at the time, in the early 2000s, that had an agent. I had a chance to go to Portugal, I took a portfolio with me, and literally all of the advertising agencies wanted to work with me, so I ended up there for 16 years. Had a financial crisis in Portugal, came back in 2012, went to the National Portrait Gallery, walking around, and I was like, this gallery is it catalogues our nation's achievers. There's no portrait in there of Lewis Hamilton. There's no portrait in there of any of the black people that I know that are achieving. So I was like, well, so I wrote a very scathing letter to the then director of National Portrait Gallery, who invited me in and said to me, okay, so what would you like to do about it? And I said, well, I would like to populate this gallery with portraits of all of the people based on the criteria for getting into this gallery. Yeah, he said to me it'd take 10 years to do. I said to him it'd take 1 year. I started to invite people to come and do this, and it was while photographing the great Naomi Campbell and listening to her story, I said I couldn't just be the only person to hear this story. So I basically hired a film team. We started to then document the conversations, and those conversations ending up as a hit TV series on the BBC called Black is the New Black. The portraits that I made of those people in that TV show were acquired by the National Portrait Gallery and became the largest acquisition of black portraits to be acquired into the permanent collection of the National Portrait Gallery, which I call the collection of the kings and queens because it will outlive all of us. Yeah, the documentary became a part of the British culture and is referenced by people like yourself here in St. Kitts.
It is. Justin, Simon mentioned a good point about building portfolios, right? When you were just starting out, how would you pitch for jobs? I mean, now you'll have people coming to you, but before you got to this point.
The biggest thing for us has definitely been, like, it wasn't as popular, I would say, when we started, but I think because we got into it early and just kept doing it, social media has really been our, biggest claim to fame, if you want to call it that. Like, that's essentially our pitch. When our couples reach out to us at this point, they're 9 times out of 10 ready to book. They know that it's, already got a premium price tag to it. But they're aware of all that because our social media is our portfolio, it's our resume, it's the behind the scenes, it's the process. Like, you can know everything about what we do and how we're going to do it before we even get on a call. And so I think for us, like, the way that even started the idea, like, that's what really blew up our social media, was that we were posting the idea of, hey, I'm gonna do interviews at this wedding. And then everyone's like, what? Like, you can do interviews? That doesn't make sense. And we had a lot of pushback. In the beginning, there was half and half where, and even now still, there's half the industry that's like, that's overkill, I'd never do it. And then there's the other half of the industry that's like, this is innovative, this is storytelling, I want to do that. And so we're constantly, like, the larger we grow, the more we see that people are on both sides, But it's been social media that's been our driving factor to, creating ideas, getting people on board. Even when we, do something and we don't like it, we'll post that and be like, all right, we did this, I'm never doing it again. But we're open and honest through the whole process. And so I think that invites not only other creatives, but like I said, our couples. They see the passion that my entire team brings when we show up to your wedding. They see the end results. They see, all the little things that we're doing throughout the day just to try to get interviews of, grandparents and family members and stuff like that. So it all goes into the same, kind of, I guess, like, category for promoting, because it does it for creatives and for couples.
Awesome. Something that I'm always curious about as well is how you decide what stays and what goes. When I was still a fledgling in broadcast journalism, I would always be at war with my editors because I would do this fantastic, in my opinion, interview that's probably half an hour to an hour long, and then you're telling me I have 3 minutes to tell this full story, and I'm like, I can't do it in 3, I could do it in 5. And they would identify, song bites that could be left out, but I'm like, I can't, I don't want to, because I feel like I was, compromising the integrity of this story and not telling as much that I think people should know. So how do you guys, what helps you decide, well, okay, these are the ones that are going to make the cut?
For us, so the cool thing, I love that you say you have an editor, right? My wife is quote unquote my editor. So she's the one who actually is cutting up the video. I'll do a 30-minute rant and she'll cut it into 28 seconds. And in the beginning, I was very hands-on. Like, I was like, no, you gotta put that part in there. You gotta mention the part where I say it's this. Like, you gotta put that spec in it. And she was just like, oh, babe, like, that part's boring. Like, as somebody who's not a filmmaker, she doesn't have the film eye, right? She's not looking at the color grade or the composition. She's just like cutting it up and throwing it out there. But because of that, the content is so much more enjoyable to watch to the consumer. So she did something that opened my eyes up to it. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna create it the way I want. But then when I hand it to her, she's gonna make sure that whoever watches it all the way to the end. And so it's kind of this team effort. And I try to tell people like the biggest thing we can do as creatives, because we're always gonna be our work. You're gonna look at your photos and always critique it. People will tell you, oh, this is the best work we've ever seen. And you're like, honestly, I was sick that day. Like, you know, and so we critique our work so much because it's our passion. That's our blood is into this project. And because of that, it's hard not to keep refining. And so to have somebody who completely is on the opposite end, who's not as emotionally connected to the project as you are, it makes it better when it is time to share it on short form social media, maybe a trailer or something like that. It makes it a little bit easier because they're editing it to solely be entertaining and make sure that it still delivers the message. Whereas we would edit it to make sure we got our favorite shot and drone clip in it. So.
You want to tackle this one as well?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned your wife. My wife's the same. I mean, my wife's not an editor, but she's very, very good at being able to watch a clip and edit. Yeah, to know when like something has too much hang time. Yeah, it's like, no, that sequence is too long. Like, what? She's like, no, it's too long. It's like, I'm doing this at this point. So nothing I make, yeah, like if I don't put it in front of her to see it first, yeah, and for us to discuss it. We have what I call executive meetings on everything, yeah, and she will go down, she'll make notes on it, she'll give me back the notes, and I'll, oh God, she's right. Yeah, she just has this innate ability to be able to understand the specifics of time, yeah, and what should end up in that time in a way that works, yeah.
Okay, and sticking with you a bit, Simon, with the rise of streaming platforms and new digital media, how do you see the creation of documentaries and stuff like that in film evolving?
I think that streaming services, it's a double-edged sword for me right now, because basically we're in after the writer's strike, the industry's in a bit of a recession. Yeah? But prior to that, streaming services were the godsend of the industry. Yeah, because it's like, it democratized our ability to see and learn and watch things that we wouldn't normally have watched, to tell a vast array of stories that weren't available for people to see. So for me, streaming services have been, you know, it's as long as they continue as long as they continue to grow the ability for people to see vast amounts of content and not retract that, okay, they're a good thing. Yeah.
Justin, what are some of the most technical skills or tools you think are needed to excel in your field?
I think, you know, we did my first ever like in-person workshop. We called it the JPM Boot Camp. And we went with boot camp because I realized, and maybe you can attest to this, but I realized that a lot of people who are creatives are very, very introverted. And the irony to that is I feel like a lot of our success, or I wouldn't even say success, I would just say the fast growth of our work was because of the fact that I'm a big extrovert. Like, I'm a huge people person. I can crack jokes with whoever, right? And I love to have a good time. And I feel like because of that, it allowed me, and I see this in the comments of a lot of our videos. I see people say this to me all the time. They're like, man, the way you talk to people, the way you engage with the family. And I realize that a lot of people that show up in film don't engage, they don't interact. If they're not spoken to, they won't say a word the whole day. And so the boot camp was designed so that we could literally, kind of like military fashion, teach you to break out of your shell. And I think one skill that if you're in any field, in the creative space, if you're trying to, lead a team, if you're not just like the DP or, someone that's supposed to be in the background, so to speak, but as a director, I feel like every director, introvert or extrovert, should have great communication skills, should be able to tell your idea with confidence and make sure that the people are accomplishing that. And if you can't, I feel like that's where it starts. So introverted or extroverted, I said this at the boot camp, I was like, I don't think that that's a thing. I think it's just a skill, and we all start as introverts until we practice being extroverts. And so I think if you can practice communicating, practice being more vulnerable with other people, I think vulnerability really helps in the documentary space, because if you can reason with someone, they're more likely to open up to you. If I can use nonverbal gestures like, nodding my head and kind of looking at you with good eye contact, instead of doing this every 3 seconds, looking up and, if I'm nervous, you're going to be nervous. But if I'm invested in you telling me the story and I'm sharing a little bit of my story and then going to the next question, it makes it feel more wholesome, more relaxed, And I feel like those are traits that every director should have. It's the ability to, be vulnerable, be able to talk, be able to share an idea, and have that confidence behind it. And you can still be extroverted or introverted. You just have to know when to turn it on and be able to talk, and then you can go back into your shell if you want to.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add to that you said something earlier about, you have to try harder. I think, my father said to me, you always got to try 10 times harder. Yeah, which means that on set, it's like usually, on set, well, when I was coming up, I knew most of the jobs on set. Yeah, and I could do most of the jobs on set because basically when I was coming up, I was the only person doing those jobs on set. So you learn to do everything, yeah? So you learn to have a very wide skill set. But as Justin said, you have to be a great communicator and you have to be extrovert because you're the front-facing person. What I find with a lot of people who come into this industry as a filmmaker, videographer, photographer, whatever, like you said, they're introverted. So what they usually do, how they usually start out their work is by doing maybe street photography and doing candid shots, so they don't have to speak to anyone. You're over there, I have a long lens, I take your picture, I'm good, yeah? I go about my business, yeah? But as a director, and I think the higher up the ladder you go as a director, whether it's doing the work you do where you've got clients coming in and so basically I'm just going to say this: what you do, yeah, and dealing with customers, yeah, the public, it's like I couldn't do what you do because dealing with so many personalities and also their whims and the specific requests that they have, that's a skill set. That's really, that's like being a pastor in a church. Yeah? And I say it's like being a pastor in a church is because basically, as a director, you straddle two lines. You have to be part politician, yeah, and part evangelical pastor, yeah. And why I say that is because basically when you come up with an idea, yeah, you come up with a small idea, you've written it down on paper, and you've got to go out, and everyone you meet, you have to evangelize them into your idea. And when you know that they are part of your religion now, which is they're on board, as we call it, is when you hear them speaking with as much passion about the idea as you had told them. So that's the skill set.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Innovation is often said is critical when you're a creative and an entrepreneur, right? But it could be argued that there's nothing new under the sun, and then it could also be argued that the only constant is change. How do you guys find new ways to tell old stories?
Sorry, I'm going to jump in here because when we met earlier, just before this interview, and you told me what you did, I thought it was one of the most innovative things that I'd ever heard, because I know about the wedding market. When I first started out as a photographer, you do everything, and I used to shoot weddings. I remember in a show that I did in London, Master Photography, which I told you about earlier, in which I was a judge. It was a photography competition in Europe that gave away, the first prize was 150,000, dollars, euros. And I was the chief judge on that show, along with one of my idols that I had looked up to. Basically, sorry, I forgot my train of thought.
Well,
sorry, what was the question? Sorry.
The innovation, I appreciate that too.
Yeah.
That compliment means the world. I feel like that's the beauty in being a creative, is that like he's got great credentials. You've got movies, you've got documentaries, but we could have the same family, and the way I shot the story and the way he would shoot the story would still be different. We could, on paper, have the exact same bullet points, but I'm gonna see it one way and he's gonna see it another way. And I think that's the beauty, that's the innovation, is that my mind, no matter what, is still my mind. His mind is his, yours is yours. And so when we go out to capture a film, to capture a story, I think that's where the innovation comes from, is the ideas that we see in our head, and then put that into the camera and put that into the film or the photo. That's where the innovation comes from.
Yeah, I remember my train of thought now. On the show, David LaChapelle was one of the guests. And we went out to dinner the night before, and we were talking about things that we did when we first started out. And he was like, man, I shot weddings. I was like, man, I shot weddings too. And Oliviero Toscani, who was the guy that I admired, he was like, you shot weddings? Like if, we'd stepped in dog mess, yeah? So, to see where you have taken it, yeah, where there are so many people doing the same thing and you're offering something which is so unique, that's innovation. But for me, what I'm interested in is what is cinema? Cinema in the industry is in a decline. Fewer people are going and sitting in a theater to watch film. But I think that in this region, in the Caribbean, there is an opportunity to reverse that decline, yeah, by figuring out what, in terms of younger audiences, figuring out what stories they would like to see, yeah, how they'd like to see themselves reflected, and also, from a technology point of view, what new cinema could look like in this region. And I believe that there is an innovation that's happening within this region, within the Caribbean region, to actually buck the trend of what's happening to cinema in America.
Good point. How do you guys handle creative blocks?
I watch Netflix.
Yeah?
I go through it a lot because I'm sure you probably have this, where you just feel, I have really bad imposter syndrome. No matter how good something is that I put out that people say, I only see the things like, oh man, these shots are too shaky, this color grade isn't matching, the audio needs to sound better, and I just pick apart the things that I don't like about it, no matter how great it is, no matter what the likes and the shares are. And so when I hit these hard stops, these crashes, usually I just have to watch. I have to watch something that, almost any show, any documentary, it doesn't have to be any specific genre, but almost anything that's out there, Netflix, Hulu, whatever, I usually just binge something because it's the shots. I've got a whole collection of just screen grabs from Shot Deck where I'm like, oh man, the lighting, and it'll be a random movie I hadn't seen, but the lighting got me to go watch the movie just because of that one shot. And so I literally love to see how other people work. I look up, who edited this? I follow so many Hollywood editors. They have no clue why I follow them, But, you know, like I've got probably at least 60, 70 editors, because I'll see a movie and I'm like, yo, the transitions were sick. Who edited this? Like, you know, and so I have to feel like I'm, even if they don't follow me back, networked with them, you know. But that creative block, it stops, and then I feel like that's kind of, I usually say, like, I have to recharge my creativity. It's like the gas meter in your car. Once it's empty, go to the gas station, is watching TV. So I've got to just watch things, and random things. You know, it could be reality TV, it can be a documentary, it can be a series, whatever. But just watching something and seeing the creativity, seeing how the story is captured. Sometimes I like to pick apart. I'll pause a frame and be like, all right, key light's got to be on the right side. You can see the shadow. Oh man, they got a big shadow over there on the plant. I would have put something there to soften that light, you know. And so I do things like that, because then I start feeling like I'm in the film, like I'm helping produce it. And then before, you know, like this trip was rejuvenating for me, because I've been 5 days now without even touching a camera. I brought my red, but never even put it together. So we've been, you know, on jet skis, and I've been speaking, and I've been in this creative atmosphere. So when we go back home and go to work, like this next event's gonna get everything, because I'm just so recharged.
No, I hear everything you say. My process is a bit different to yours, in that I find when I have a creative block, I understand now, with the age that I'm at, that creative block is like, okay, stop, right, go and do something else, right, go and look at other things, yeah, and the answer will come to you in looking at other things, yeah. So no, I think it's creative blocks are great, but don't fight against them. Yeah, when you fight it and you're pushing against it, that is that's bad energy. Yeah. You know, Chinese have a saying that a river flows freely. Yeah, a clear river flows nice and freely, but if you put a stone in it, okay, you cause a block, it will flood everything around it. Yeah, and I think that's the same thing, you know. When the stone, the boulder falls in the river, go for a walk somewhere else. Yeah.
Simon, how do you manage the logistics and ethical considerations when you're trying to document, or when you're documenting real life stories?
Great question. So when I'm interviewing people, I have this process. I can't tell you what the process is, yeah, and I don't want to know the secrets of it, the vagaries of it, because it's something that happens naturally. I will research people in terms of 3 lines, which is their natural storyline and timeline, their career line, yeah, and then basically anything else that we can find on them. From interviews that they have done about things that they wanted to say, but then the interviewer didn't go down that road. And we will snatch that bit in and find out what it was they really wanted to talk about. So from that, when we talk to people, it tends to be like therapy for them. And when it's therapy, they tell you everything, even things they shouldn't have. So I usually get a phone call the day after or a week later saying, from an agent or even from the person themselves saying, you know that thing that I told you? I'm saying, don't worry, you're good. Yeah. And why I say that is because I can tell their story, okay, from a perspective, but never sensationalizing their story, because that's never the objective of why I'm telling their story. My storytelling isn't about making anyone look bad. It's always to uplift people and to inspire the people who are watching.
Is it the same with you, Justin?
Yeah, I was actually going to piggyback off that. It's very similar, like your approach of, you know, I call it getting intel. So I have these weird, like, analogies, because I don't have a film background, so I don't know, or not film background, but like,
neither do I.
I don't know.
I never took a film lesson either.
Well, the pro terms. There's like in Hollywood, you know, I call them extension cords, and they're like, grab a stinger, and I'm like, what is a stinger? You know, so I don't know the Hollywood terms, so I just develop things that make sense to me, right? And so I call it getting intel. But that's where I will, I'll go through my couple's, Facebook pages and Instagrams, and I'll look at old, archive media just to find out, like, what are they? What is their personalities? What are the things that they're not saying? And then I try to create my storyboard around that. Like, okay, this is what I need to talk about. But the same thing, honestly, I do what I call a story introduction call. And we do a Zoom call, usually after they book. We spend about an hour and a half on the phone. And I've had multiple clients cry during this call. Because we go deep. Like, it's not just about the relationship, but I need to know why you're choosing this person, So I want to know why your ex is not the one and why this person is, What's different? What changed? What feels different? We go deep down that, because for me to understand your love and your relationship allows me to now show up and talk to you like I've been there the entire journey. So now we're at the same level. You don't feel awkward. I know everything there is about you. And like he said, it's not to bring up your ex in the film, but it's to make sure I can pinpoint the exact reason of why you're about to say I do in a little bit. So I love that. I think it's very similar. Like, it's that ability to just be vulnerable and get the story. But sometimes, you got to go down different branches, because the answer will be behind these doors that they didn't want to open. So.
Okay, Justin, sticking with you just a little bit longer, I'm curious. You said that you would usually mic up a bunch of people in the bridal party and stuff like that. Do you share the raw footage with the couples? And if yes, have you ever had an incident where not all pleasant stuff were being said behind the scenes, and would you share that? Or, like, what are the ethical considerations there? Because if you have the couple asking to see the raw, would you take that out before you share it for them, or would you just share everything?
Yeah, so we do provide raw footage, but it's only the raw footage. So whatever audio was captured by the camera, you'll hear. We don't deliver raw audio. So we don't even allow it to be bought. So the raw audio, because it's a very fine line, right? Like, you're gonna be drinking, like you may make a comment, and it might have just been in the moment. But in the wrong context, it could be seen as, oh my God, I can't believe he said that. And it could have been very innocent, right? But and I'm sure the movie magic. You can take a soundbite and move it, and now it means something completely different. Because of that, we don't release raw audio. So we'll give the raw footage. You can see every clip that we record, any interviews when I'm in front of you, anything like that, cool. But the raw audio of where the talent's wearing the mic all day, like that, anything that's not synced to the actual main edit gets deleted.
Okay, as we prepare to wrap up, both of you, are there any common mistakes or misconceptions that newcomers to your respective industry should be aware of and try to avoid?
Oh, yes.
I'm listening for this. I'm here for it.
All right. So people think it's easy. It's just easy, yeah? I can just pick up my iPhone and just make a film, and it's easy, right? It's become easier, but it's not easy, right? If you're making a reel, yeah, and you're making a good reel, it's going to take you time to make a good reel, yeah. If you're making, a lot of people come into the industry to make films, and they say, okay, I'm going to make my short film. And then they make one short film, make two short films, they make a bunch of short films, yeah? But then when they go to make their long form film, they fall short, yeah? Because it's like, making a short film is like, it's like in athletics. Anything from 100 meters, from 50 meters to 400 meters is a sprint, right? Anything over 400 meters, to 3,000 meters is middle distance, and then everything above 3,000 meters is long distance, yeah? And, when you're making a film, it's long distance. And you have to develop certain muscle for that, because you're going to be working on a project for 1, 2, or 3 years, yeah? And it's going to be in your life for that amount of time. So I think, for me, some of the mistakes that people make is not knowing the process, not knowing the toll that the process will take on you physically, and mentally. Yeah, in short, it's hard work. Yeah, I love what I do because I don't consider it to be a job, but it is hard work, and it's hard work that takes a toll on the people around you as well if they don't understand the process. Yeah, because they may not be involved in your work, but they are involved in your work. Yeah.
I think for mine, it's kind of two parts. The first one is the same, like the easy part. I feel like a lot of people, when they pick up a camera and they jump into the videographer world, is that they're quickly trying to chase the high ticket items. And as a result, they don't perfect the skill. You know what I mean? Like, it's just work. Oh, I want to charge. Like, I've had so many people, what do I got to do to be able to charge $15,000 for a wedding? And I'm like, well, like, for starters, maybe frame better. Like, it's not about selling it. It's about having good work. If he wrote horrible stories, he wouldn't be able to make the pitch to BBC, right? Like, it's getting good at the skill first, which is not an easy thing, because all skills, this is why to be a carpenter or an electrician, you have to go through a 4 or 5 year apprenticeship. You have to get the hours in first. And so that's kind of my first thing. And then the second thing is not being open to creative feedback. I think that's really what helped me. I've got one friend, his name is Mitch, and he rips the Band-Aid off every time. So I know when I'm super close on a project, I'm like, oh, this is the best thing I've done. I'm like, all right, here we go. Let me send it over to Mitch, because I know he's gonna give it to me straight. He's a good friend, but he's not here to like hold my hand. He'll tell me flat out, like, yo, this is boring. Or like, yo, first 30 seconds was dope, but the last 18 minutes was horrible. And I'm like, dang, And so he'll give me good advice on, like, this is what I would do. I would take this part out. I would completely rework this. I don't think the shots or the framing looks good here. Work on your exposure. Work on your sound mixing. Like, he would give me this feedback. And instead of being, like, so egotistic where I'm like, dude, like, I've got 200,000 followers. You don't know what you're talking about. I can actually take that and be like, wait a minute, all right, hold up, like, you're onto something. Let me try to critique it. Let me try to fix it on the next film, and I'll go into it with that feedback and try to just keep polishing my craft. And so I think a lot of people, maybe not so much at your level, but like in the beginning as a videographer, like they hate hearing that. Oh yeah, I wouldn't have done that, and then they go straight to justifying instead of listening and just absorbing it. You don't have to agree, but be open to creative feedback, because it'll just help you.
No, that's a really good point, because basically the other thing as well is it's like that creative feedback. If you've got a good team around you, like literally on set, there could be, I remember reading a quote from the great David Lynch, and he was saying that a great idea could come from the tea lady from the crafty services, right? Who says, it's like, should that be there? And you go, no, it shouldn't actually. And you move it, and it makes it a good thing. But never put bad ideas in your film. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, final question. A lot of creatives, many of whom I've spoken to over the last couple of days, have shared that they struggle with imposter syndrome. And because of that struggle, sometimes they could stand in their own way. What tips do you guys have for navigating that or coming out on the other side of that?
I'm going to tell you a little story which shocked me out of my imposter syndrome. I grew up in England, as I said, of Grenadian parents. And the thing about having that dual identity is that I still have that English self-deprecating kind of side to my personality, or should I say had that in my personality. And when I was living in Portugal, I was working for Getty Images, and they said to me that they wanted to move me to the States because basically clients liked my work and I'd make more money. So I said to them, I'd go if I could shoot advertising. They said, okay, we'll set you up with some meetings. So I went to this ad agency on Fifth Avenue in New York, and there was a creative duo. I won't name them, and I won't name the agency. But creative duo, white guy, black guy. White guy was the copywriter, black guy was the art director. And I'm sat down and I'm going through my portfolio. I hadn't become a director or a filmmaker then, so it was purely photography. And I'm going through what was a very rich portfolio of great work that I was able to do in Portugal. And this white guy's like, oh my God, this work is, oh my God, this work is, oh my God. But behind me, and he's like, oh, so tell me about this. And I'm like, well, you know, I did it, and it was, and I could hear behind me, oh, damn. So this went on for about 10 minutes, and I looked back and I said, I'm sorry, but do you have a problem with me? To the black guy, and he's like, well, actually I do. This is some of the best work we have seen in this agency since I've been here, and I've been here for 7 years. Man, your work is dope, but you need to bring yourself up to the level of your work. And I was like, oh. Yeah? So that's my lesson. Yeah? Don't get in your own way.
I don't know if I got one to top that. That was really good. I feel like sometimes you need, you know, like, the person for me is my wife, you know, and I think she's been the biggest, like, she is the reason that I fight the imposter syndrome. Whenever I feel it, she's like, babe, look at these comments, look at all the people. Like, she's constantly reminding me and showing me of the things we've accomplished. And then I think what really helps me with imposter syndrome is not watching my creative peers work. I think, you know, it sounds, you know, kind of, hypocritical to what I said in the last question, but about watching Netflix. But like when I watch, like, you know, like one of my friends' work, you know, I'm gonna look at that and automatically believe that they're better and that their work is more polished and more premium, and then I'll start to doubt my own work. As a result, I start feeling this imposter syndrome. Oh, why am I up here at the Creative Power, you know, when this looks better, or that color grade looks better, or that, you know, and I'm honest with myself. I know that there's a lot of work to be done within my films and within my skill set. But because I have this battle of, like, I didn't try to be this, you know, influencer or this, you know, presenter where I'm motivating or encouraging other people, because that wasn't the path that I was trying to actively go down. I'm going down the path of, I just want to make great films. I want them to look like Netflix shows and like documentaries that we see on big screens. This side of it was purely accidental. So I battle should I be the one speaking, or should I just be the one in the audience listening? You know, so I'm listening to Simon talk about going through the Hollywood phase, and I'm like, wow, didn't even know. Like, I'm genuinely intrigued. Like, I'm like, tell me more, you know, because I feel like that's where my imposter syndrome comes in. It's like I kind of battle that. But what helps is just either reviewing work that I've done 5-6 years ago and comparing it to today, you know, listening to how things were mixed back then and then listening to it now. And then I'm starting to realize, like, wow, we've made strides in my work. It's not where I want it, but if you go back to 2018 to now, it's like 2 different people filmed it. So
can I just add to that? Yeah, because I think it was my career is I've been doing this a long time. I've been filmmaking since 2014. But when I had my first hit TV show, and I've had 3 hits now. When I had the first one, no one tells you what it's like to have a hit TV show. So I was sitting at an award ceremony that I'd been invited to. I didn't have anything nominated, and the award ceremony had finished. And when I looked to my side, someone said to me, "Are those people waiting to talk to you?" And there was a queue. And the first person in the queue was this guy who used to run Channel 4 in England, who was like, "I really admire your thing. I want to talk to you about what we can do next." After half an hour having those conversations, I had a huge migraine, and I left. Yeah, and it wasn't until probably 3 years ago that I fully, when I was in the States and having some meetings with some top US execs, black execs, it wasn't until then that I had fully understood the impact my work had on the market, yeah, on culture, right, and to my peers, right? And importantly, I didn't understand where my positioning was, yeah? I thought my positioning was a lot lower in my head than actually where it was, yeah? And it's really important to understand your process, yeah? That the insecurity in you is what makes your work you keep pushing your work to become better, yeah? But at the same time, it's like you have to at some point understand where you sit in the realm of your peers, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Again, thank you so much for your insight. Thank you for taking the time to share snippets of your respective journeys. Unfortunately, we're all out of time. Ladies and gentlemen who have been joining us online, thank you so much for tuning in. Just a reminder that we resume with another conversation at 12:30 p.m. today. I am Dion Batiste Clark saying goodbye for now.